Creative Mornings and to Ashley and the Sister House Collective for having us here. It's a pleasure. My name is Arash Gafoori, and I'm here today to talk to you about survival. So, really quickly, a little bit about me, just so you get a little perspective. My background is in poli-sci, international relations, and economics, and I've had the privilege, I guess I should say, of working with think tanks, governments, corporations, startups, academic settings, and nonprofit settings. And through my journey, bouncing back and forth in all those sectors, I really found my passion, which is kind of the intersection of business, policy, and community, and how you can leverage those intersections and those talents or skills that you've quote unquote acquired to help the bottom line of the human services sector. So as opposed to benefiting a corporation's bottom line and what their balance sheet looks like at the end of the day, I chose to kind of benefit the bottom line of humans and what we can do to help support the bottom line and create more equitability among all of society. And I said international relations earlier, and my focus really was on kind of solving inequities that exist between countries and different systems of government. However, we have plenty of work to do in our own backyard. So that's why I'm kind of focused locally right now. You see that very last one on the bottom there? That's actually a little snippet from my dating profile. I'm just kidding. But just so you know, I like hanging out with my brother and sister. I like camping. I like traveling. I like cooking. I love technology. I love hip hop and travel. And especially my long walks on the beaches. Those are my favorites. So with that, let's get started. Just to give you a little context, I'm here today to talk to you about survival, not necessarily homeless youth, but you really should understand a little bit about what our agency does so you can understand what our story was with survival. And our story happened nearly 6 years ago, but just so you know, the issue of youth homelessness is one of the worst in our community. We have the third highest population of homeless youth in the country. This is actually an epidemic in not only our own backyard, but throughout the country as well. So on a separate note, some other time, if any of you are interested in learning more about the issue of youth homelessness and what you can do about it, I highly encourage you to connect with us at Nevada Partnership for Homeless Youth, because each and every one of you can make a difference. And even if you think you can't, you can. Through just your mind, through what you do, through your time, through advocating for this issue, there's lots of different ways to help. Really quickly, we are the most comprehensive service provider of just homeless youth services. We provide services to unaccompanied homeless youth. Unaccompanied homeless youth are youth that are under the age of 18 that have been abandoned, neglected, tossed aside, thrown away, have no connection or linkages to their parents or any sort of legal guardians. So they're on their own, and it's a really, really sort of scary place to be, as you can imagine, being 12, 13, 14, and being on the streets in our community. So what we do about it, really quickly, we have outreach programs, and we have outreach programs where we go find youth on the streets, we go talk to them in different community settings, we try to go to schools and find them wherever, and get that message about our services out to them. We also have a Safe Place program. If any of you have ever been on the bus or visited a Terrible Herbs gas station or driven by a fire department, you will see a yellow diamond on the side of the buildings or on the right by the bus door, and it says Safe Place. And basically, any youth can walk into any of those locations or hop on a bus and get a free ride, and they'll be connected to us. So that virtually gives a homeless youth an entry point at essentially every street corner here in Southern Nevada. And with that program, we'll go pick them up and assess their situation day or night, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. We also have a drop-in center, and kind of like it sounds like, it's a big, big house that we have right by UNLV in a residential neighborhood. And it's essentially what it sounds like. A youth can drop in at any time. So we're doing outreach services. We want to connect them. We don't know when they're going to show up, when they're going to be brave enough or have enough trust enough to show up. But we're there. We're ready for them. We're always encouraging them to. And a drop-in center is the anti of a clinical or institutional environment. It's designed to look and feel like a home, very, very intentionally. And we've gotten a lot of community love to start from a very small house and then another house, tearing it down and building this like beautiful home for these homeless youth to really give them somewhere that they can call their home, somewhere that they can kick off their feet and feel like they actually belong there and that they're not trespassing or loitering or being a nuisance to anyone. In addition to that, we have an emergency shelter, just like it sounds like. Any youth can kind of stay at our shelter day or night if there's an emergency for them, if there's a sudden crisis in their life. They're welcome to stay with us until we can figure out the next steps for them. And then we also have a family reunification program. It's our least successful program, and we'll talk about that another day, because a lot of the environments that these youth are leaving from or getting kicked out from are not environments that they can go back to. But if there's any other family that they connect with, we'll be happy to get them connected with those families and pay for transportation and other assistance to get them there. But in any other circumstance, NPHY will be that family for those youth. And then lastly, we have an independent living program, and basically that's a transitional housing program, and at any time 20 youth can live with us that have no other options, and we essentially transition these youth using time, support, resources, skills, and developing their own self-determination to become self-sufficient, young, and independent adults, because that's kind of what their cards have dealt them in that situation. So we just have to help them get to the point where they can be independent and self-sufficient and chase the same dreams that we all have the luxury of chasing. So enough about NPHY. Let's start talking about survival. So wanted to talk and start with a quick quote from Charles Darwin. For those of you that can't see it, read it real quick. "It is not the most intellectual species that survives. It is not the strongest that survives. But the species that survives is the one that is able to best adapt and adjust to the changing environment in which it finds itself." And that is definitely an environment that I found myself in about 6 years ago, and that my agency found itself in 6 years ago. So now I'm going to tell you about the tale of NPHY and my agency. So it's story time. You're going to like this PowerPoint. So anyway, imagine being asked to take over an agency, a business, a corporation. I mean, a nonprofit, all it means is you get tax exemption and other things. Other than that, you have to run just like a business, just like a corporation. Imagine being asked to take over a business with only 2 months of cash flow, with over 90% of your board members exiting in 1 month, funders threatening to sue for their donated monies, and the FBI and Attorney General knocking on your door all at the same time. Imagine taking over and figuring out how to deal with that mess while still providing high quality services to your clients. So we figured out a way. Just to give a little perspective, here's some of the headlines that were swirling around the community. "May step aside as embattled head of homeless youth organization." "FBI is asked to join investigation of Vermilion and former charity." "Charity founded by Vermilion tries to reassure donors and supporters." "Vermilion sues charity she founded for defamation." So sometimes when you're learning about crisis communication or crisis management, they kind of give you a theory like, hey, well, if this happens, then do this. But they never really went over a lesson when everything happens at once and every single theory is reality at the same time. So it was kind of like, the best way to describe it is this. Since I'm camera, I'm going to say it just got real, but I wanted to say was, you know what got real. So just to give you a quick overview of the controversy, late 2011, there was basically accusations of financial misproprieties at the organization. A complaint was issued to the Nevada Attorney General, and later the FBI was actually asked to join the investigation as well. NPHY took action as quick as it could, separated from former management, and instituted a new, I don't know what they call it, a new mission-focused executive director. That would be me. But right after that, NPHY was also sued for defamation, and then there was tons of media and controversy swirling around our agency at the time. Some of you are nodding your heads. That means you've been here long enough that you actually saw it, because it was the political spectacle of this town for about 2 years. And anyway, so out of nowhere, and just give a little context, some of you may not know the name Vermilion or Bhutan, but essentially this charity was founded by former City of Henderson councilwoman. And that is juicy enough for a town like us. But what made it even better is that her boyfriend at the time was the now chairman of the Clark County Commission. So arguably one of the most powerful people in Nevada. So that made headlines. And to tell you the whole juicy story would take more than a whole hour, and I'm here to talk to you about survival. So I'll try not to distract myself, but normally when a charity is accused of financial misproprieties, statistically, 90% of them close their doors within 6 months. It's basically game over at that point. So all odds are really against us. But again, this is not just a story of a charity and having financial misproprieties and figuring out what to do about it and survive. We're also caught in the crosshairs of the political spectacle of this town from 2011 to 2013. Because again, our founder was a prominent political figure, and they were a powerhouse couple in this town. Everyone knew who they were. Everyone was trying to do business with them. So when this happened, it got really bad really quickly. And what I mean by that, there was a public downward spiral in the relationship that was correlated with our agency. It was all happening at the same time. So anytime that something happened with that situation, NPHY was in the middle of it. Anything that happened with NPHY, their names would get brought into that as well. So this isn't just a matter of the charity. There was accusations and attempts of extortion. There were secret recordings that were made public. There were 911 calls. There was demands for polygraph tests, and unfortunately, even suicide attempts. So this was a really big deal, and this was the controversy that our charity was dealing with. And that drew headlines, lots and lots and lots of headlines. In fact, we're in the media local media about 300 times in 1 year. So that's about one time a day. But not only just the local media, this was picked up by national outlets, by national newspapers, and we were even published in an academic journal. So this wasn't just kind of a blip on a map. This was a really big deal. Last thing related to that, I found out later that a PR firm actually did a story comparing how organizations or entities manage crises. And the three subjects were NPHY, the Susan G. Komen Foundation, and Justin Bieber. Believe it or not, Justin Bieber had this whole thing about someone accusing him of being pregnant or something like that. And basically, the gist of that study was that NPHY and Justin Bieber handled it correctly. And Susan G. Komen, for those of you that know what happened with them, maybe they needed a couple pointers, or they should have consulted someone first. But Justin and NPHY were commended for handling the controversy as best as they could. So with that, let's talk about our survival strategy a little bit. And you can kind of sum it up as keep calm and carry on. But as a leader, what do you do in a situation like this? So you have to kind of take a moment and figure out what's going on and act promptly and not hurriedly. And what I mean by that is that you don't want to have a knee-jerk reaction. You don't have a lot of time to come up with something because there's people that are asking and demanding information immediately. There's the media hounding you. The media somehow figured out my gate code and would show up at my house because I was hiding from them until I figured out what to do. But they kept coming and coming and coming. So you do not want to start talking without having some sort of plan. Even if it's something as simple as saying that, hey, we're aware of the circumstances and we're going to figure out what's going on and we're going to report back to you as soon as we have that information. That's good enough in the very beginning. But do not have a knee-jerk reaction going, oh, well, this happened and this is crazy and we're accusing people. You know, don't do that. You have to really stay calm and collected and keep it really simple at first because you don't know what's going on. It's ground zero. But whatever you do, don't do what Sean Spicer did and go hide in the bushes when all the cameras on you and think that no one's going to find out because that's just not going to work out. You need to take accountability. Now, a lot of people are afraid of that. Now, taking accountability doesn't mean that you're taking blame. It just means that you're taking responsibility to do something about the situation. So that's what we did. We took accountability and we outlined the fact that, hey, we're in this situation, we don't know all the elements, but we're going to do a top-down investigation. We're just as concerned about this as anyone else. And every step of the way, we're going to sort of be reporting back to you on what happens. And that's really taking accountability, and you have to do that. You can't shy away. You can't point fingers. You have to say, hey, we're on top of this now. We're in control. We're going to figure out what's going on. And that is how you help kind of control the narrative and frame the message moving forward, which we'll talk about too. You have to manage expectations. You have to manage the dialogue, and you have to control the narrative. If you do not, someone else will, or the media will take over and run with it and do whatever they want, and you will lose your control. And then essentially it's game over. The initial statement above is a way to manage those expectations. Hey, right now, we're figuring out what's going on. We're going to do top-down investigation. We're going to report every step of the way. And you have to kind of stick to those consistent talking points, but at the same time, you have to deliver on that too. So you can't just say that and then go away, because the media will keep coming after you and keep coming after you, especially when there's things like extortion and FBI and 911 calls being publicly released and all this other craziness going on. So it's really important that you manage expectations by letting them know exactly what you're going to do. And then you demonstrate control. You cannot control the external factors. You can't control what people are doing. You can't control the 911 calls. You can't control any of that. But what you can control is how you react to those situations and how you react and communicate the narrative. So, oh, this happened? Great. Well, this is what we're going to do about it. And that is your reaction. That is how you control the dialogue, and that is how you demonstrate that you are in charge of this situation, that you did not create the situation, but you're going to get to the bottom of it on behalf of your constituents, on behalf of the clients that it serves, and for that public that's been investing so much to help homeless youth in our community. People need to know that you are on it, and you need to demonstrate that every step of the way. But you got to keep loose and malleable. You got to be adaptable. There's going to be lots and lots of curveballs, and you got to be able to dance. You got to be able to nimble, kind of like Muhammad Ali. You got to be dancing around that boxing ring because you don't know where the punches are going to come from. So that's really, really important. And something especially important is you cannot let your emotions get in the way. This is really, really important. You cannot wear your heart on your sleeves at all times, especially as a leader of an organization. Even if you're terrified or feel defeated, shake it off and carry on, and certainly don't present yourself like that. You must exercise emotional control and maintain composure. This is really helpful because the second that you become emotional, it clouds your clarity, it clouds your judgment, and you're going to need all the clarity that you get to survive a situation like this. And the second that you get emotional, factors like fear and other emotions come in, and those cloud your judgment, those cloud your sentiment, and cloud what you need to do. So you need to stay laser focused as much as possible, and that is why you really cannot become too emotional about this situation. And lastly, you have to maintain a positive mental attitude. People watching you. In my case, I felt like everyone in town was watching us. No, seriously, coworkers, the youth we serve, donors, the media, our board, the general public. I mean, this was like on Fox, ABC, NBC, blah, 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 every night, over and over. Who actually was around town when this happened? Yeah, so anytime you click the TV on around 5 or 6 o'clock, usually we were the first or second or third story. It was like our little Paris Hilton crazy, meltdown here for about 2 years, and everyone was watching it. Everyone wanted to see what the next piece of the story was going to be. So imagine what that's like. I'll just talk about one, but imagine what that's like for your employees. Imagine going to work and signing up to fight and combat the issue of homeless youth in our community, and waking up and seeing headlines saying, accusing organization of doing bad things or having financial misproprieties or whatever the case may be. Imagine them thinking about, are they going to get paid? Are they going to have a job? Do they even want to admit they work there to their friends anymore, et cetera? Imagine what that is for them. So you have to maintain a positive mental attitude. You have to create an internal narrative for your employees, and you have to create an external narrative for the public. And that internal narrative and those external narratives have to keep people inspired and hopeful. And you have to demonstrate in those internal and external narratives that you're in control of the situation, and here's the exact steps that we're going to take to get through it. And although that all sounds really easy, I'll give you some tips on how we can actually do that a little later. And we're not going to spend too much time on this next slide because it's kind of boring, but essentially, so I'll just click through it. But this is what we did. But this is going to be unique to each of you because your own business models have their own value propositions, and you need to figure out what's important to you, what's important to your brand, what's important to protecting your product. And those would be different for each and every one of you. But the most important thing that you must do, regardless of whatever your business is that you have to show control. You have to control the narrative as much as you can, and you have to demonstrate and communicate with the public. You have to follow through. You can't just say, hey, we're on it, and then just disappear, because people just think, they didn't do anything about it, they're guilty, they're gone. So we actually would call press conferences. We actually would call the media and say, hey, come here, guess what we just found out? Because we wanted to show that, hey, we were serious. We're going to find out what's going on. We're going to do a top-down investigation, and every step of the way, we're reporting back to them. We're reporting back to the public and keeping them engaged and keeping them going, oh, wow, They're actually doing something about this. They're actually trying to figure out what's going on. They were essentially a victim of this situation themselves. So anyway, but from a business perspective, you want to do a SWOT. I mean, we can talk about this some other day, but there's all kinds of things you want to do. For us, it was improving our finances, demonstrating that we picked a list of changes that we're going to make and actually delivered on making those changes, whether those financial, accounting, other types of policies, the way we communicated with our donors, et cetera. We took this as an opportunity essentially to shake the tree and do a top-down evaluation of our agency and use that opportunity to change and tweak everything we can. And from that came improved programming, improved staff model, improved culture, and improved ability to make a difference in the lives of homeless youth. So trust me, you'll get through it, but it will take perseverance. It doesn't happen overnight. And it may feel like nothing you're doing is making a difference at first, but it takes time for things to marinate. It takes time for the public to develop a perspective. And they're not out there to vilify or judge immediately. They want to know what's going on. And as long as you keep communicating, they will not judge you immediately. But if you don't, what else do they have to go on? They're just going to go on whatever's swirling around in the headlines, whatever's going on in the news. So really quick, there's no playbook when stuff like this happens. There really is none. But you will not have all the answers. You will know what's going on. The only thing you're going to have is the lucid realization that you're the person that needs to figure this out and no one else will. And that's a little scary at first. But it's okay, because as long as you have the determination and some of these other things that I'm talking about, you can get through it. A couple really basic things: you have to treat your colleagues well. They're your team, they're your essence, they're your everything. And in a time of crisis, some people go, well, if someone's not working out, I'll just bring someone else in. Yeah, no, not when you have all these headlines swirling on. No one wants to come work for you in that situation. I mean, I was a crazy one to kind of say, hey, I'll try that. But it's really important to realize the power of your team and what you can harness from them, because without the team, a leader is nothing, and the agency would be dead immediately, no matter what. And if you're an individual entrepreneur, that applies to you and the different ways that you play your role within the agency too, and you have to keep that in mind. So even if you're an entrepreneur of one, you have to make sure that you stay strong on all fronts. So you can't let one or two parts of you slack, because you are your own team at that point, and you have to invest in keeping every part of your team strong, whether those are individuals or different components of yourself. So anyway, don't take anything for granted either. Sometimes in situations like this, people are frenzied and people are like, quickly trying to figure out what to do, and they aren't noticing the details and the nuances and the minutia. And sometimes it's these details and nuances and minutia that can potentially be the game changer, potentially be a tool that you use. So you have to really kind of keep in mind the macro and micro details of everything that you're dealing with in your crisis, in your environment. Because those little details are the differences between successes and failure. I can say, hey, do this, do this, do this. But at the end of the day, there's tons of details in step 1, step 2, and step 3. And you have to pay close attention to every part of those things, how people are reacting, how employees are thinking, what people are saying, a one-off comment that you think, oh, it's not a big deal, I can ignore that because I got bigger fish to fry. No, those little fish become big fish really, really fast. So you have to keep a lid on all of this as much as you can. I think I went too fast there. Yeah, so putting your setbacks into perspective, that's kind of an easy one in the sense that no one at NPHY, that remained at NPHY, had anything to do with what happened. So all we could do is go, hey, we're gonna be in this together, we're gonna do something about it, and we're gonna learn from our mistakes, make sure they're not repeated, and use this opportunity to change things for the better. So that is kind of how you put your setbacks into perspectives, because many people are like, oh, they're gonna close their doors, they're gonna be gone in 6 months, they're gonna be acquired, whatever the case may be. But we kept the perspective of this is an opportunity. This is a major opportunity for this agency and for our youth, and to put this issue on a map in a different way. And that was part of our resolve and our drive to try to kind of go against all odds, if you will. Don't take it personally. Again, emotion is very important in a situation. I just said don't be emotional, but emotional control, emotional intelligence is of paramount importance in this situation, because this is just a playbook. But you're gonna actually have to live it, breathe it, and feel it. You're gonna have to work with a lot of personalities and a lot of individuals. So you cannot take things personally, whatever you do. Emotions can cloud your clarity in situations of crisis. And emotions normally are very great guides, for us in our lives. But in a moment of crisis, you have to learn how to leverage emotion, and you have to learn when to put emotion aside a little bit. Because if you are too emotional in a situation, you will start taking things personally. You will start going, oh man, I just don't feel like I can do this, and blah, blah, blah. And then the second you do that, your mind starts playing tricks on you. Your mind opens up the possibility that you may not be successful. And you can't have that in these moments. You have to be laser focused, which brings me to my last point. Act like you've been there before. And what I mean by that is basically to maintain composure, you have to act like you've been there before. You have to act like you know exactly what to do, even if it's uncharted waters, even if you don't know what to do. You cannot have that impression externally or even internally among your team. So you have to be calm and composed for yourself, the agency, and the people that are part of your agency and the clients that it serves. Adversity, no big deal. FBI investigations, been there, done that 10 times. No problem. This is another day in the park for us. So that's the kind of attitude you have to have. That, you've been there, you've done that. But in private, you take a step back and you go, okay, what am I going to do? How am I going to figure this out? And remain fearless. Again, these last couple are all related to emotion. Remaining fearless, you have to project confidence. And that starts with this, here, and here. And then your agency, and then your clients, and then the public. But it starts from, I don't want to call it the top, but here, right? It starts internally. And what I mean is that, if you have absolutely no fear, you're probably crazy. But you need to remain fearless in the sense that you need to be confident. You need to be confident in yourself. You need to be confident in your ability to get through this. Because if you are not there, you're going to project a lack of confidence. You're going to project instability. And the second you do that, people won't think that you have control and don't think that you have the resolve to figure out the situation. So you have to remain fearless, if you will. Don't worry, we're almost done, guys. So, techniques for holding strong during difficult times. Do not divert from your mission. You cannot drift your mission, change your business model, and think, oh, well, I'll just package this differently and no one's going to notice a thing. In fact, there's many people that gave me the advice of, hey, Arash, you should change the name. You should stop using the word Nevada Partnership for Homeless Youth because it's tainted. It's like a bad brand now. It's black. We disagreed. We're proud of what Nevada Partnership for Homeless Youth is. And you change the name of a business, you decide to rebrand in a time of strength, not in a time of adversity. And if we did that, people would think that we had something to hide. And we didn't have anything to hide. We're the first ones trying to say, hey, we're going to do something about this. We're going to figure out what's going on. And if we went and changed our name or did something to try to give the perception that we were doing things, changing us somehow, the public wouldn't buy that. The public would be like, they're hiding something. And they're trying to cover it up, and they're trying to change the name, and they think that we're not going to notice, and that could also be a game over. So in a crisis, don't drift from your mission as an agency. We serve clients. For you guys, customers, whatever it may be. They could be humans. Well, they're always humans, but sorry, that calendar, I just saw what's on their calendar. I'm like, well, they're out there watching this too. They're out there seeing the news. They're seeing this as well. And our customers, they're teenagers. They don't understand the politics. They don't understand the business people. They don't understand the business piece. All they feel is that, man, everyone else in my life has neglected me or let me down or abandoned me or not been there for me. And I put my trust in this agency. And trust me, that's not an easy feat. Youth aren't just going to walk in your doors. But again, that's another story. But once they're there, they put their trust in us. We're like sometimes their last hope. And when they see all this around, all they're thinking to themselves is, man, they're going to let me down too. They're not going to be there for me as well. So first and foremost, one of the most important things for us was to talk to our clients and maintain a consistent narrative with them. So they got the information from us. So they could ask us questions, be like, why are we seeing this? Why is the FBI here? What does it have to do with us? And we explained it all to them to the best that we could. And that kept them comfortable. That kept them secure. That's what family is about. Saying we're in this together, we're communicating, we're going to figure this out together. But not where you just go, don't worry about it. Ignore it, ignore it, ignore it. Again, that's the same thing. If you try to tell the public to ignore it, if you try to tell your clients to ignore it, they're going to form their own impressions. It's probably not going to be the one you want, and it's going to be detrimental to your chances to actually figure out what you need to do to survive. You need to promote, again, in the same note, you need to do this with the public as well. You need to promote transparency, that you're not trying to hide anything. And sometimes that leads to kind of unpleasant conversations because you got to admit where the mistakes were made. You can't cover those things up. You got to promote the transparency. You got to get it out there and say, hey, yeah, unfortunately, that's what it was. But here's what we're doing to change that. Here's what we're doing to remedy that. And here's what we're doing and what measures we're putting into place to make sure that nothing like this can ever happen again. So we did that. And then we also stayed in contact with partner organizations, and we didn't shy away from networking. What's really interesting, I'll tell you a quick story. It's critically important not to hide. You have to stay out there. You have to stay relevant, and you have to demonstrate that control. Because the second that you're not seen, people are going to think that you're not in control. People are going to stop thinking about your agency. You need to be out there. You need to be trumpeting, hey, here's who I am, here's who my agency is, and we are not going anywhere. And you have to exude that. But that doesn't come easy. Again, emotional intelligence and emotional control, people can talk about it, but actually practicing it is quite a different thing. And I remember going to one of the first sort of like public meetings right after this crisis, like, kind of like right after ground zero, if you will. And there was our peers, other agencies, some funders, government groups there. There was about 30, 40 people in the room, and we had to do intros real quick. And I remember I was dreading coming to me. And they're going around, and next it was me. And I admit at first I kind of just wish I wasn't there. I didn't want to acknowledge that I was who I was and I worked for where I was, because I was worried about what everyone's thinking about us. So I said something like, I'm Arash. You guys know where I work for because it's all over the news and all the crazy shit's going on with it. I sat back down with my head down. And one of my peers and colleagues came up to me afterwards and said, hey, don't ever do that again. You need to be proud of what you're doing. You need to be proud of what you're trying to do. You need to be proud of your agency. And that stuck with me because they were right. They're never in a situation where I need to have my head down and go, yeah, we're the organization that's going through that crisis. No, yeah, we're that organization. My name's Arash. I'm with Nevada Partnership for Homeless Youth. You probably know who we are right now. Hi. And that's the attitude that you need to have. And lastly, you use this moment as an opportunity for growth and innovation and improvement. In times of adversity, it's so easy to make changes. But when things are going well in our lives, we don't want to change much, right? We think everything's kind of going well, right? The same thing with business. When business is sort of going well, profit looks good, this looks good, customers are happy, you really don't want to change much because you think everything's fine. But for us, everything was a mess. Absolutely everything was a mess. So this was the best time to make lemonade out of lemons, right? So we just took the entire opportunity to figure out every little change we wanted to do. Humanistic changes, business changes, finance changes, business, political changes, policy changes, communication strategy changes, program changes, becoming more holistic, thinking about things differently. And that's what we did. Today, the only thing that's really the same about MPHY is its name and its mission. Other than that, we've had an entire culture shift, a paradigm shift in how we do business. And it is working, and I can assure you that. So use this opportunity when you're in this situation to create as many changes as you can. And in fact, with prior management, culture, from what I understand, was not great in Nevada Partnership for Homeless Youth. Internal culture, the staff, and clients. Now, culture is pretty amazing at MPHY. And you can come to our organization and hear that firsthand from our clients and others that we serve. But that positive culture came from this crisis, was born from that. It's kind of like a phoenix rising out of the ashes. We had an opportunity to do everything over again, and we took full advantage of that. You see stories like this slowly starting to go away. And guys, again, this didn't happen overnight. It took like a year or more. But slowly, these things started going away. And these things started coming in. Youth partnership, regaining lost footing with donors. Las Vegas Homeless Program for Youth offer graduates more than a diploma. Vegas Homeless Youth Drop-In Center expands. People were investing in us. Thank you, NWP. Nevada Partnership for Homeless Youth gets really exclusive grants to double the size of its emergency shelter, expand its facility again. Nevada Partnership for Homeless Youth is saving the dreams of homeless kids. These headlines, we realized within 18 to 24 months after a crisis, when everyone in town was betting that we wouldn't be around in 6 months. And these were some of the tools that we got to use, what I've shared with you, to sort of make this happen. Sorry, that distracted me, I'll admit that. Yeah, so anyway, these were some of the tools that we used and implemented. These were some of the leadership skills that I picked up, personal development skills that I picked up, professional development skills that we got to share with our staff, and different things that we did to sort of turn this crisis around. And anyone who's a PR person will tell you that this is not easy, that you don't just go, oh, well, I'm gonna do this, send out a couple press releases, it's all gonna work out. It's not that easy, it never is, but we were able to do it. And if we can do it, you guys can do it. And really quickly, are we good on time? Yeah, okay. Really quickly, 5 years later, in retrospect, some of the pros is that we got to press reset. I just talked to you guys about that. You get the opportunity to do it all over again. But I will phrase it to you a little differently. The external threat in this situation was a crisis, but the internal threat was us, was not changing, was not adapting. So we needed to fix the internal threat. So what do? We pressed a reset internally on everything. We imploded the place and basically started over again and built it all from the ground up. So that's what we mean by sort of pressing the reset. We fostered adaptation, meaning, well, we had to figure out what to do to survive. So everything was changing. So we were adapting to these circumstances. We were adapting to new news. We were adapting to new information. And we had to figure out what to do. So it was no longer business as usual. We took risks that we normally wouldn't take to ensure our chance of survival. So what we were doing at that time when we were taking these risks and developing these new strategies, everyone hears this concept of best practices, right? Well, what we were doing is we were developing our next practices, which became and are today the best practices that we use at our agency. Again, we didn't take the opportunity to go, oh, well, we're gonna lay down and see what happens. We took the opportunity to embrace the challenge, embrace the opportunity, and do anything and everything we can. And a lot of these best practices that we use today were, again, sort of birthed through that whole controversy. So that's kind of what fostering adaptation is. And we embrace the chaos. Yeah, you really can't do anything about that. If you're a captain of a cruise liner, when you're just in calm waters going throughout the ocean, yay, fun, easy for everyone. You see a storm coming, you try to get out the way. And if you can't get out the way, you can't navigate the ship like if you're in calm waters. You have to ride those waves, you have to ride that choppy water, you have to figure it out. So you have to get used to the fact that it's gonna be a chaotic environment, it's gonna be storming, you're gonna have to be adaptive and really quick on your feet. So that's kind of embracing chaos. And this is really probably the most important thing, generating internal leadership. There used to be a time in my life, I'm getting old when I say this, but especially when I was younger, where I kind of looked at a lot of leaders of big organizations, nonprofits, corporations, whatever. I kind of didn't think that they had a lot of, added value. I kind of thought that they were just figureheads and that the people underneath them were doing a lot of the work, and they ended up taking all the credit. And to this day, I still think that there's good leaders and bad leaders. But what I learned is that a good leader is someone that surrounds himself with the best talent that they can find. That a good leader is not the biggest, bestest badass in a room. They don't have to be the best at everything. You don't have to be on top of accounting, on top of marketing. You don't have to be the number one in every one of those. And leaders make that mistake. They think that they need to be excellent at every single thing that they do. No. What you need to be do is excellent, and what you need to be good at is excellent in finding the right talent and the right composition of talent. And getting people in a room, hopefully, who are smarter than you, more talented than you, and more diverse than you, and are not afraid to speak. You don't want to be in a room full of, people who say yes to every idea that you have. People say yes to this. People say yes to that because they're afraid to say no. You need to surround yourself with people who are willing to speak their mind and say no. This is a terrible idea. What about this? Have we thought about it from this perspective and that? And you have to invest in that with your team. Even if you have smart and bright and talented people, at MPHY, we have a pretty young staff. You still need to empower these individuals to find their voices. You still need to empower these people to find their internal leadership skills and what their add value is to the team. And you need to make it about the team. So at MPHY, we're very non-hierarchical. I don't like using the word staff a lot. I like using the word coworkers more. We're really not about who's on top of who, or who has to go through what chain of command to get to whatever. We're about come to the table with your best every day. Come to the day and celebrate your diversity, celebrate uniqueness, and don't give a shit what anyone else thinks. You just do you and contribute to the team. And that's what we had to do. We had to generate internal leadership. And you guys are a cool crowd, so I'm sorry for being a little casual. I can also be very technical to the camera. So anyway, that's really, really important. Investing in your internal team is everything. Because if your team is not invested in, if you don't have a team, guess what? You're dead on arrival. You got nothing that you can do. And one person cannot handle a crisis like this alone. No, I don't care how good you are. I don't care how smart you think you are. It's not about just those factors. So you have to have a team. You have to have an enriching environment to work with and to kind of think about these problems and come up with quick solutions. But there was some cons. And I'm gonna skip over the boring stuff. You know, I wish we would have used a different accounting software earlier. I wish we would have consulted with different consultants earlier, et cetera. All these little boring stuff that's unique to our business. But a general lesson that anyone can take away from this, if you're dealing with a crisis in your business or life or anything, I wish I would have invested more in self-care. I have an amazing team, and we persevered, and we survived, but it was taxing. It took a toll on people. It was hard and difficult to rally the team, but the team itself was inspired to not let a situation like this affect the homeless youth. That's what we were all worried about, the youth. We didn't want to close the doors on the youth. We didn't want to have to turn away youth because it's something that happened that had nothing to do with the youth. But we brought in forensic accountants. We brought in legal experts. We brought in all kinds of talent wherever we could to give us advice. But we never invested in self-care. And I wish that I would have brought in a therapist or a compassion fatigue expert to normalize the dialogue that, yeah, we're in a crazy crisis situation, people, and it's okay to talk about it, and it's okay to externalize. And I couldn't do that, being the leader, because of everything I just told you, and kind of how you have to be that bedrock, how you have to maintain that composure. Composure is so important to all of this. But I should have brought someone in that could talk to people, that could normalize the dialogue. Oh, yeah, this is crazy. Yeah, it must be crazy to feel like you don't know what's going to happen, and this and that. And I wish I would have invested in that. And luckily, nothing happened in a bad way, but in retrospect, I think it would have been easier for everyone, including myself and my whole team, if we would have had the opportunity to talk to someone about this, because it's not something that you can talk to a lot of people about, and admit that you have fear, admit that you have insecurities, and things like that. And I wish I would have brought someone, because we were working really hard, and someone that is an expert in compassion fatigue could have helped normalize that for us and help us figure out channels and ways to process that. So in retrospect, if you're ever in a situation like this, one of the first people you want to bring in are people who are experts in compassion fatigue, therapists, things like that, to help your staff. So 5 years later, really quickly, we only lost one donor. We've grown and diversified our donor base substantially. We've secured federal grants that are really competitive and this community has never seen before. So if the federal government and different departments of the federal government is investing in us, obviously we've done something right to instill the security into them to make that investment in us. We also got tons of local investments. We are serving now more homeless youth at a higher quantity and a higher quality than we ever have before. And imagine overcoming adversity while never turning away a single client or shutting down your door for one day when you took over with 2 months of cash flow and federal criminal investigations. Yeah, we did. So anyway, for us, survival was the only choice. The agency needed to survive. I mean, these numbers are scary. We have over 14,000 homeless youth enrolled in our school district. We lead the nation having the highest percentage of our youth our homeless youth being unsheltered and on the streets. Clark County has the third highest population of homeless youth in the entire country. And that's not statistically adjusted, that's not per capita. Those are raw numbers. So when I say it's an epidemic, it really is. And we need to survive because we're the representatives of that population. Personally, I could have walked away and not even pointed out the problem and just said, but I didn't mention this in the story earlier, but I'm actually the person who reported a lot of these alleged misproprieties to my board. Some people call that whistleblowing. I call that doing the right thing for our homeless youth and doing the right thing for the investors that put their hard-earned dollars into this organization. But imagine a little pipsqueak 26-year-old telling a board, a very powerful board, that, hey, there's some weird stuff going on here. They thought that I was crazy. And they actually tried to separate ways with me, and I got put on leave at first. And then they called me about 2 months later and said, uh-oh, can you come back? Can you figure this out? And I said, yes. And I could have been the guy who just kind of started the fire and left. I could have said no in that moment. But I already felt invested. I already felt responsible. I already felt that if someone wouldn't do this, who would? And I really felt the responsibility to those youth. So after I came back, I could have been the guy that just fixed things and said, all right, you guys are stable now, figure this out. But I wanted to be the person to catapult MPHY into the future and put it into a position of security. And I say I, and I rarely use the word I. I'm a big believer in the word we, especially when it comes to the team. But yeah, it was personal to me as much as it was a professional development opportunity. It was a personal development opportunity. I wanted to rise to the challenge to do something great, to benefit children, to benefit homeless youth at the end of the day. So survival was the only choice for my agency, but it was also the only choice for me. Because if MPHY burned down, so would the voice that we're providing for the homeless youth in our community. And they don't have a voice. They don't have someone that's lobbying for them. And we needed to be that group, that agency. And if we went away because of some issues, that would be a disservice for every one of those lives and for our community as well. So with that, just so you know, we invited the Attorney General. The Attorney General didn't come breaking down our door and going, we found out this happened. Nope. We invited them in. We invited the media. We did all that. Because again, what I told you earlier, we're the ones trying to control the narrative. We're the ones that were trying to paint a picture. We're the ones trying to say, hey, we got this. We feel like we're victims in this situation as well, but we're gonna rise to the challenge of figuring out what we need to do, what the issues were. We're gonna report what the issues were. We're gonna report the solutions to our issues, and we're gonna demonstrate results. And those headlines are just a small representation of the demonstration of our successes. The fact that this strategy can work for each and every one of you. And I'll end it with this note really quickly. This is kind of an ironic story to tell all of you. Our agency, due to a crisis that we did not cause, almost found itself on the streets, almost found itself over. But we adapted. We got help wherever possible, and we doubled down on our self-determination to survive and flourish to where we are today. You know who else's story that is? Every homeless youth we serve. Every homeless youth we serve is on the streets for a circumstance that they did not create in their lives. They're 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, whatever. They're not in charge of their lives yet. They're relying on other people to take care of them. And something bad happens to them, they end up on the streets, or they end up in these at-risk situations through no fault of their own, and they have to fight for their survival. And they're scared because there's no playbook for a 14-year-old to be on our streets, on our cold, hard, well, right now, really hot, hard, dark streets. There's no playbook for that. And we don't have a playbook either. But through a combination of resources, self-determination, time, support, and hope, these youth can also flourish. And it is amazing to see their resiliency when they have all this abuse and all this neglect. And similarly, MPHY went through something like that. So when I say it was really personal, and it was really part of our survival, we literally experienced the very thing that we're trying to make sure our youth don't have to experience day in and day out. And that's the irony behind this survival story for you all. Thank you.